All right, guys, welcome back to the Dirtbags podcast, episode 1.5. Got my fellow dirtbag, Luke Payne, owner of Black Iron Dirt. What's going on, Luke?
What's up, my fellow dirtbag, Luke? How are you today?
You know, just enjoying the ride, man.
Absolutely, man. Absolutely. What'd you think of that last podcast?
There wasn't, at least for my experience, light bulb moments have been a fallacy. There really hasn't been a light bulb moment ever in my life. It's, you take one step and then you take another step, and maybe it's a good step, maybe you step in shit, whatever it is. I don't know if I can swear or not, whatever the format of your guys' podcast is.
Support it.
It's the Dirtbags.
So went to work at I Build America, and the way I like to put it is there were just differences between how I thought it should be run and how they wanted it to be run.
I just can't believe, the amount of content we got in one episode. So we sat down, obviously, with Aaron Witt and just really just hashed it out with him of, his story, his passion, like his mission of like what he wants to do in the dirt world. And it was so exciting listening to him really get into it, because if it was very off script, there was no script, obviously, and really got him going on the dirt world. It was awesome.
It was great. I enjoyed it too. One thing that I liked a lot just listening to it as we were recording it was I've been listening to him for a while, and granted, he's got over 100 episodes on, Dirt Talk, but it condensed a lot of those episodes on his story. Obviously there's a lot of other people's story on there, but it brought it, compared to having maybe 25 different episodes where there's, 25 to 30 or whatever it is of bits and pieces of how he operates into that hour with us. So it was really fun to kind of dialogue with him and really dive into his business when he's, doing that with other people.
Yeah, it's interesting because he almost interviews people for a living, like you could say, and, that's just part of what he does. But you wonder like how many times he's being interviewed, and, so it was really fun to just have him on our show instead of the other way around, and just get to jump into conversations, that we wanted to talk about, and really just take that direction with him. But just an incredibly nice, humble guy. He's our age, so it's really cool to see how far he's taken this business. And, if you haven't, like, you almost have to stop and think like how big the business is in such a short amount of time. And, when I was talking to Aaron, he was just saying like, we are literally trying to reform an industry here. So we can't just do a couple of things, half-assed, or just do this, but maybe not that. He's like, we need to literally pave the way, and we're going to have to spend a lot of money. We're going to have to bring on absolute rock stars to our team. But they're not slowing down, and they're going to go for it. So I love it. And, I see their mission of making the dirt world a better place, and just instantly makes me think like, how can I jump in and help them with this mission? And it's just been so cool to see everything that they're doing.
It's almost like, how can you be a part of it with them too? Like making the dirt world a better place. There's so many different aspects to the dirt world. It's like, obviously they're doing a lot to do so, but, on our end, okay, what can we do to help as well?
Exactly.
It takes an army type thing. So, and they've got a big army behind them, but yeah, it's been a lot of fun to just follow along with them.
Yeah. And he'll tell you like straight up too. He's like, yeah, we can't do this by ourselves. Like, that's why we need people that have this passion, with us. We need people on our podcast. We need smaller companies like my agency that, we work with $1 to $10 million revenue companies, and they can't even like really touch those companies because they work with much, much bigger companies. So, and then they also just need like people supporting their pages and things like this, and really seeing what they're doing. So, huge hats off to Aaron, not only Aaron, but the entire team. I've talked to many of his team members, and they're just like, they're all on fire for it. So it's awesome to see.
It's so fun to connect with them too. I know, like, I follow obviously Alex, and just a couple other of like the higher up executives that build with, and they're younger people. And, they're so fun to just kind of follow along with, because they have their own stories to tell within the business. So it's fun to obviously follow along with them. And it just brings it to more of like a reality space.
Yeah. I don't remember which podcast it was on, but I was listening to Aaron talk about that. And, he's like, he was just baffled why people wanted to come work for him. And, they were just like mind blown. They're like, this is awesome. You actually like care about what I have to say. You're empowering me to make decisions. And he just said like, I'm surprised every business doesn't do this, so it's something that Luke, you and I talk about quite a bit of. Sometimes you don't have to do something extravagant or crazy. You just have to like do the right things. And just doing that alone can get you a long ways. And then you pour some gas on that fire and things can really get going.
Oh, 100%. It's not hard. You just have to do what you're going to tell people you're going to do. There's nothing worse than over-promising and under-delivering, so that's something that we always, just what we try to do is, if we're going to do something and we tell somebody we're going to do it, we better make damn sure that we actually are. So I don't know. I think that's something that kind of lacks in every industry, that I hope this generation coming up, our generation, the one behind us, kind of, grabs by the balls and is like, hey, here's what we have to do in order to make a successful company. That's rule number one. Do what you're going to say.
Yeah. It's, I don't know if you've noticed, but I see just so many people coming into the industry, and there's not enough coming in, I will say that, but there are just some hungry young people that are like, I want to do this and I want to do it right. And they're killing it. Like they may not think it right now because they may not be cashing massive checks, but if they just keep that steady, lay a brick at a time instead of trying to build the tower in one day, I mean, they're just going to kill it. And I think, we have a little bit more, like we can kind of say that a little bit more now because you and I have been working together for like 2 years, and we're just trying to be like steady Eddie, just keep going, keep growing, keep doing the right things. And both of our companies are growing, but we're also not done yet either. And we want to just keep going and really scale it up to where, we're not only helping ourselves and our families and our teams, but also helping others who are trying to do the same thing.
Yeah. It's kind of tough to obviously teach this, but I was just thinking, I wish I would have like learned how to talk shop, right? In like college. Like, how do you know? Obviously you have to be in the industry to talk shop, right? You got to know the terminology, you got to know the language of the people, and that's something that's learned. How can you learn that earlier on? Have you ever stop me if I'm wrong, but have you ever thought of that? Like, I look back 3 years ago, when I would talk to people and I just knew I was timid. I'm like, I don't want to say something wrong. I don't want to say something that oversteps, but now I'm like, I'm comfortable what I say. It's almost like I'm not worried to offend them type. And it's not even like offending them, but it's just fun banter. You got to make a connection with the customer, obviously. And I feel like that's something I almost wish I would have learned how to do more of. And maybe that's a public speaking thing. Maybe I should have taken more public speaking classes, but.
Yeah. I mean, honestly, I don't think it's a public speaking thing. I think it's a repetition thing and just a confidence thing, feeling comfortable in what you're saying and what you're doing. I was the same way, when I first started, I had to look up some of the terms that we were talking about, cause I just didn't know what SEO was or what, hosting for a domain name was or any of that stuff. But, talking shop, like in college, especially in this industry, it's like, how do you get that experience without doing it? And I don't know if you can read that out of a book. I don't think, at least if you could, you probably didn't in college. Cause did you go to a 2-year or 4-year?
So I went to a 2-year. I went to, it was called Minnesota State Technical College or something in Moorhead. And I think you went to a 4-year, right?
I did. Yeah. So I went to Mankato, got a 4-year bachelor's in sport management and marketing. Nice. So I'm not using the sport part, but it's interesting because same thing with me in marketing. I didn't learn any of the stuff I'm using today in my 4 years of college, which is kind of scary to think about, but I will say it wasn't like all a waste. There's tons of lessons I learned, but I guess maybe what do you think you learned in a 2-year? Like, did you learn anything by the book, or was it kind of just like experiences that you learned from?
So like when I think back at college, the only like how I felt of college was still how I felt in high school. Like it was a test. I had to pass the test. Where do I find the answers for this test? Right. We had so many resources. I remember we would take quizzes online and we could search the quiz answers and find them. You know, you'd find the answer somewhere on Google. I don't remember what the website was called. But I didn't look at it as like, I need to learn from this. I need to pass, right? That was the only thing I cared about. Looking back, I'm like, you know, granted, obviously I paid attention, and some of that stuff it has no relevance, right? It's just, it's a curriculum that they have to teach. And I get that the teachers have to do what they have to do. But because I was so bored, I had no engagement in there, right? In those classes. So for me, like personally, I don't know if going to school was like the right choice, but above that, you know, remember coming out of high school, you know, when you graduate, the only question that people would ask you at like your grad parties, where are you going to school? You know, what's your plan? Where are you going? And you almost felt obligated. Yeah. Like, oh, I'm going to NDSU, or, oh, hey, I'm going to ASU, or, oh, and if you would to say a 2-year, the typical response was, oh, hey, that's not so bad. Oh, hey, that's not the worst thing in the world.
Right.
So I almost think there's kind of a stigma around the 2 and 4 year colleges, right?
Yeah.
Not to knock the college system at all. I do think there's some major flaws in them, but I think it's weird. They kind of brought this up on the last podcast here the other day, but they talked about how there's 65-year-olds that are teaching, you know, social media marketing.
Yeah.
What the fuck do they know about social media marketing? They're 65 years old. My dad's 55 years old and he doesn't even know how to turn on his phone. Right. So I'm just like, okay, let's get with the times here a little bit. But then also I can't bash school too, because I feel like school is not only such a tool for the education side, but I think that's one of like your biggest tools for meeting people, because you really have to network to find people that, you know, are in the same industry as you, or they're in different industries that you could possibly use. And again, college, you don't think that. You're not thinking ahead and like, oh, hey, I really need to go talk to this one because he's going to be a CPA in 4 years down the road. And I want to know on certain things, and he could be a really good connection. You don't think of that. So yeah, the school stigma is what I call it, because there's such an argument of, you know, 2 year, 4 years, should I go to school? Should I not go to school? I do think school is important, but not for the education. I think it's more important for the relationships that you gain. Right. So I don't know. So, and I have nothing to say bad about a 2-year college. Obviously, I don't take a lot from what I learned there, but I do remember some of the people that I've met, and I still keep in touch with them today. You know, so obviously there's good connections for them, but I don't know, it's a tough topic.
It's interesting when you bring that up, you know, 2 year, 4 year, and, you know, when you say, because I totally agree with you that it's most times it's not so much about the education, it's about like the relationships you build and the determination and the, you know, the scheduling you have to have, and, you know, different things like responsibilities, things like that. But there's also that line too of like how much you're going to pay for that. So, you know, I did go to a 4-year. Mankato wasn't like the top tier colleges,
but it was expensive though still.
I mean, I came out 4 years with $41,000 in student loan debt. I'm like, shit, here we go. You know, gotta pay this off. And so luckily, you know, my wife and I, we really buckled down and, you know, paid it off, and, you know, basically didn't do anything for a couple of years there. But it made me think, I'm like, could I have done this, you know, in 2 years? I guess a good answer to that for my story personally is I look at the lessons I did learn, like paying off the debt, and also like the lessons I learned in college. And I wouldn't trade that or go back for anything. Mm-hmm. But I also look at it and say, okay, if I'm talking to a junior in high school that is interested in entrepreneurship, that's a totally different story, because I look at that much differently now. You know, I could have started my business with 0 degree, and then you could have done the same, because not once have I been asked what my GPA is if we're trying to take on a client. And I don't think you've been asked that either.
Yeah. What did you get in trigonometry class or whatever whatever math you're taking, calculus 2 or whatever? Circling back. Okay. So 41,000 in student debt, right?
Yeah.
What would a $40,000 business loan have done for you if you wouldn't have gone to school?
It's interesting, man, because I did start the business debt free. I just cash flowed it, and we're still debt free, which is awesome. To think if I had 40K sitting in the account, I mean, I know things would look a lot different. Yep. And I would believe in myself that it would be for the good, because it would have accelerated a lot of things, I'll say. And so if I had that money, or you could reverse engineer it and say, if I didn't have to spend that time paying that money back, kind of where would we be? So I would say, I mean, it would accelerate a lot of things as far as like different softwares that we use and our team that we've built. It would probably save us a year, 2 years even, and really get into the industry a lot faster. But we are where we are, and that's kind of where we're building. And I think about it too. I'm about 2.5 years into the business. We niched down in the dirt world probably like 6 or 8 months ago. Would I take a $40,000 loan out right now? And I think about that, and I wouldn't, because we're just cash flow positive and try to, make more than we spend. And we also, it's a different business. We do digital marketing, so we don't have overhead. We don't even have to pay gas for our equipment, pay for an office, things like that. So I understand it's a totally different animal in the excavation industry. But me personally right now, I definitely don't regret it. But if I'm talking to an entrepreneur that's a junior or senior in high school, I'd probably have a different conversation with them.
What would you tell them? Would you recommend college to them?
No, I wouldn't. And kind of like you said, there's nothing wrong with it, but I would recommend, hey, do something a little bit different than everyone else is doing, which is instead of going to college right away, take that first year and start your business and talk to, if you're starting an excavation company, give Luke Payne a call and say, hey man, like how do I invoice people? How do I get started? And you'd sit down with them and kind of walk them through some things. Or if you're starting a digital marketing company, give me a call. And it's amazing how many degrees you can learn from somebody that's done it instead of, just trying to go through school and expecting that to kind of pave the way for you. So if you do it for a year, it doesn't work out, or you just don't see the path, then you can still go to school. Like school is always going to be there. It's not going away. Plus a lot of your friends will, be doing 5-6 year degrees. So you'll catch right up with them.
Correct. So as far as off the topic of the school piece, but still with the school piece, how do people, if you don't go to school, how would one person try to go about making those connections with people? I'm trying to think from a 2-year standpoint. I'm like, what could I have done to, be more involved with school, but not with school. Right.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah. So the first thing that comes to my head right when you said that was LinkedIn. And I can expand on this further, but LinkedIn is amazing because if you're just on there, you're already ahead of X amount of people in business. And if you're active on it and you're reaching out to people that own businesses that you're interested in, there's a good chance they're going to respond back, because the only messages you get on LinkedIn are sales and spam emails. That's like, oh, we're going to 10X your leads, blah, blah, blah. And nobody wants to read that. So if you get a genuine message from somebody that's just looking for advice or looking to grow, you're going to get a message back. So jumping on LinkedIn and really just saying okay, what do I want to do? And who is somebody in that industry? And then just shooting them a message. If they don't have the answer, they'll send you to somebody that does. And another thing that I got into probably about 2.5 years ago was writing handwritten letters. I write everyone a handwritten note. I have a wax seal stamp. But that automatically gets you to the top of their list. Whoever you want to talk to, or whoever you want to get a job with or get a connection with, write them a note, and there's a great chance you're going to get a response back. So That speaks to everyone in the digital marketing agency world and speaks to everyone in the dirt world. Like no matter which way you cut it, just that personal aspect of it, you can kind of get what you want. And then also the reciprocity. So don't just look to take all the time. Like what can you give to somebody as well? So that may be, if you reach out to a big construction company, you're like, hey, we're Black Iron Dirt. And, this is what we do. We're very good at grading. Do you have any work that you could sub out to us? Here's kind of how we do things. Here's our pricing, things like that. And just see what they say. What are your thoughts on, kind of taking it to the dirt world side of things?
See, I'm thinking like differently here. So like with college, like say without having to get the education piece, how do you still get that college experience? Like how, because I think that's important. Obviously college is super fun. I know I had a lot of fun and I know you had a lot of fun too. So like if someone is kind of torn, because what is it to be considered a part-time college student to live on campus, right? Is it 6 credits? Is that part-time?
That sounds about right. Yeah.
Okay. So, and again, I'm not anti-school, but I'm pro connection, right? Yep. And college brings a lot of connections. So it's weird. I had this conversation actually with a guy the other day, and he was asking me, he goes, Luke, what should I do about school? And I was like, well, what do you want to do? And he goes, that's the problem. I have no idea. And I feel like a lot of people going into that school space don't have any idea. So what we were talking about was, okay, where are you going to NDSU. Okay. Cause your first year, if I'm not mistaken, is more so generals, right?
Yep. First and second usually.
Yep. So I was like, well, how about going part-time? I said, well, what do you want to do? Like, what do you want to do for work? And he's like, oh man, I really want to say, I'll just say work in the dirt world or something. Right. Okay. I really want to be an excavator operator. Oh, I really want to own my business someday. And so I was like, well, why don't you take and again, college, shout out to them. I said, well, why don't you take your, classes online? And he goes, well, I can do that. But then still live on campus to where you still kind of get that experience. And again, I don't know. And this, maybe you can shed some light on this as well, but like in your classes, do you meet a lot of people in your classes? Do you really talk with a lot of the people? Or is it more so go to class, wait for it to be done, leave, get back to the dorms when you're throwing a darty or whatever it is, right?
Yeah. So your first year or two, you do, and then it kind of like filters through of like, who you end up hanging out with and who your actual friends are as well. So most of my friends I met through darties and different parties and things like that. I met a few definitely in class, but then I saw them on the weekend. So it's my recommendation, to your point is you can either go part-time, live on campus, and then work part-time as well. Or this is something I actually thought about, working full-time and living on campus with college friends. So, or friends that go to college, because then you still get invited to all the stuff. You're still going to meet a ton of people. And you just don't have the school part, which is the part for me that I didn't like, or I didn't look forward to.
Same.
And the part that I didn't get the most value from. So I got the most value from the relationships, the people, the situations, things like that. And really just putting myself out there, living on my own, things like that. But living with people that are in college, I think would be a great alternative. You save a bunch of money, you still get that college experience, but then you're also getting the experience on the job, which like you said, if you're looking to be an excavator operator, like you got to be out there doing it. And that's how you're going to learn the most.
You're going to start as a laborer or hand or whatever is basically what I told him. And he's like, oh, I can't just jump in a hoe and go from there. I'm like, no, you got to, it doesn't really work that way. You got to know a little bit about it. But yeah, I'm not against school. School just didn't do me any good. The one thing that I think I missed out on, and I know it's because I thought I had to work so much.
Yeah.
Like I worked a full-time job while still going to school full times. And like say it was snowing. Again, I worked for that landscape company here in town. I'd say, fuck class. I ain't going there. We got snow. Priority. I don't give a shit. So again, I don't know. I don't think working full time is the best, because then you almost immerse yourself, and I feel like you do miss out on a lot of opportunities.
Yeah,
so
that's true.
It's one of the balancing things. It's so tough for a high school kid to know what they really want to do. I feel like,
right.
Did you know what you wanted to do when you left senior year?
Not a chance. I mean, I think I wanted to be a doctor, which that didn't work out, but I'm glad it didn't. And it's crazy though. It's, like you said, when you're in high school, you're 17, 18 years old, you just
you're thinking of joining frats. You're thinking of girls, you're not thinking with your head. You're thinking with the other head, which that's fine. There's nothing wrong with that. But yeah, I don't know. I want to know like how one can still get that connection piece. Cause I think that's one thing that I think I missed out on. Granted, I had a lot of friends in college and hung out with them all, but they were hometown friends. I didn't meet a lot of people that were new friends, and I wish I would have. So I don't know, when we find that answer someday, I think that'll help a lot of people. But I feel like that's kind of the common thing with school. Oh, fuck school. I'm just going to go work. There's no point. Well, there is a point still. You still want to meet those people, but maybe the education side doesn't benefit you. Don't get me wrong. To be a doctor, you got to go to school, right? You got to know all the veins and all the muscles and everything that happens in the body and all that type of stuff. So I don't know. It's a topic that I've had a conversation with a lot of people. And it was a conversation that I had one night with my family. We had come back from dinner. We had a couple old fashions in us. So we were all just giving it our all. And I was arguing, I remember, with my sister, because she was like, oh, you went to a 2-year. I'm like, yeah, of course I did. You went to a 4-year. You think you're a lot better than I do. Granted, she's really smart, but obviously the alcohol was talking. But I just remember the conversation where I'm like, there is such a stigma around 2-year, 4-year. Again, kind of topicking back down to the 2-year, 4-year. It's tough. And again, coming out of college, if you don't know what you're going to do, what do you do? And again, I don't think there is a right or wrong answer. But yeah, it's just a big stigma piece.
Yeah. And that's a good point, because I think it's pretty obvious, to anyone listening that, we don't have the answers, Luke and I, and that's pretty obvious.
This bullshit banner that we're just going back and forth.
But it's a great conversation to get some feedback on, because a lot of times, say you are a junior in high school, you are only getting one option or one decision, and give yourself options. And maybe you start your business in high school, that's an option too, because then you can kind of compare some things. So, it doesn't hurt to
work for somebody that or work in the same field where you want to go into, learn how to do it or learn what not to do.
So, it's the age old debate, but I think it's definitely, away from school a little bit more. And like, people are realizing like, once I graduate high school, I can jump into work, but I can also still figure out a way to meet people and hang out with my friends, things like that. So
correct.
One last thing, moving to a new city helps, especially if you plug into like the college and everything. And if you're not going to school, I moved 5 hours south from Detroit Lakes to Mankato. Didn't know anyone there. I said, all right, this is where I'm going to school. And it was one of the best things I did, because I met some of my lifelong friends there. So if that's another way to help people, is to, get out
of your comfort zone, basically.
Yep. You can
always force you to get out of your comfort zone.
Oh yeah, 100%. Because if I didn't get out of my comfort zone, I would have just sat by myself and done nothing and been bored. I'm like, well, I might as well just be uncomfortable and meet some people. And then, obviously, it doesn't take long to realize everyone else is in the same boat as you.
True. Yeah, no doubt about it. Yeah. There's so many different stories on college too. I know a lot of people that are like, fuck, I shouldn't have even gone. You could make 6 figures without going to school, but it's just knowing those right people again. Right. And I hate to say it, but there is a lot of cases where it's not what you know, it's who you know. And if anybody wants to debate me on that, that's fine. But in my case, I've seen that more than not.
Right. So, and to dig even further in that, it's not so much just getting lucky and like knowing somebody's name. It's more of like, you're good at building relationships, and like this person can vouch for you and you can vouch for them. And it's like, that's who you know. It's not just like, oh yeah, I'm connected to this one guy on LinkedIn I've never talked to, that doesn't really count, but
you don't know them.
Exactly. And, we talk about it all the time, business is all about the relationships you build, because that's then the money comes from that, from those relationships. And that's the best way to grow. And that's the most sustainable way to scale, is just by putting people in your corner that are going to help your business grow, and, the money follows suit.
Correct. I 100% agree. 100%. So diving into, I want to talk a little bit about, the future of the Dirtbags podcast. I know obviously we had our overview episode was first, and then we had Aaron Witt. That was like our first official episode. And then this is kind of the next month. Yep. So what's the structure look like, and what's the mission moving forward? Why are we here? Right.
Yeah, basically.
Well, what we want to do with this podcast is we want to interact with people. We want people to interact with us. We obviously, per our past 20-minute conversation, we don't have all the answers, no doubt about it. But I feel like we have good connections. So that's where we came up with this Dirtbags, to where we both had positive and negative experiences in, different aspects of our business, to where we would like to connect people with the good people so they can maybe miss out on that, mistake that they make or whatever. Granted, they're great learning opportunities, but it's still a setback. So if we can help people with those setbacks, I think we did our job. Right. So that's kind of my view on it. And then obviously, having Aaron on, I think he's just such a staple mark for, like you said, innovating or recreating the whole dirt world side to things. But obviously they're doing a great job on it, but there's so many different avenues in there. There's so many different industries that involve the dirt world, I feel like. So it's tough to, grab and pull each one and bring them in, but it's such a big community that I feel like we could reach a lot of people with, or, connect a lot of people with different people in said or different industries. So.
Yeah, absolutely. I just see it as, kind of clarifying that point there as well, of just, you and I have had the privilege of working with a lot of companies, and, whether it's a tax guy or a financing company or a dealership or whoever, we get to kind of see it all. And it's not all direct from us. It's also people we've worked with that have had great experiences. So we're just trying to consolidate that into like one will be website. And then so that way you can jump on like the Dirtbags website and see like, okay, I need to I need some money to buy some equipment. Like, where do I even go about learning about that, for one? And then two, like going to someone I can trust that's like a referral. We'll have all that stuff on the website. And that's the goal. The podcast, will be a channel to talk dirt, obviously, and then to have one guest on every 2 months to really add value to the listeners. I think that's something Luke and I have wanted to do a bit differently than, my Phaser Friday podcast is more about their story, but this will be more about learning and development, and really just like diving into some topics that are very relevant in this space, and, just kind of, very relatable, and just connecting those dots for people. So, we're always taking, advice and taking suggestions, questions, things like that. So, we want this to be kind of a free flowing platform, not just a podcast. And that's kind of the point of why we started this.
Yeah. And you actually, on the podcast with Aaron, didn't somebody reach out to you and say, oh, hey, I've never heard of Aaron Witt or Build With Leaders and what they've done. And, obviously after talking with or listening to the podcast, they went over and they, looked up the Build With Leaders, and I'm sure they're probably using it now. So again, bingo right there, class, example of what we're trying to do. And it doesn't, there's so many different ways we can do that with, businesses to businesses, businesses to consumers, consumers to businesses, there's so many different avenues.
Right. And so I got that text, and just, he hadn't heard of the BuildWit app or hadn't seen any of the BuildWit Leaders content or anything like that. But he said, because we had that podcast, he then searched everything, started digging into it. And he's like, yeah, I stayed up all night, just like digging into the BuildWit Leaders and everything. And, I just sent that to Aaron. I'm like, this is what we're all trying to do. We're all trying to connect everyone with good quality people, good quality businesses, and connect the dirt world. And, to BuildWit's mission, make the dirt world a better place.
Mm-hmm. So what you're saying is you want people to reach out to us with questions. You want people, obviously, share this podcast. Like Andy Frizella says, you have one fucking job, do the fucking job, share the shit, right? So obviously share the podcast, seriously. But then that'll help us connect other people too, to where if they do have these questions, we have a pretty good book of business of just people that we know that we can refer people to.
Right.
Or if they have something that they want answered, we can make that a topic, on this podcast and talk about it with, say it's one of the industry professionals that we know that the topic is relevant to. Right. So yeah, share it, get in touch with us, DM us, slide in.
Yeah, absolutely. And, for anyone listening too, if you haven't noticed, like Luke and I are both very active on all platforms. So, LinkedIn, Instagram, however you need to reach us, you can find our contact information. It's all over. So
shoot us a hotline.
Yeah, for sure. So we love just talking shop too. I just launched our Dirtwork marketing website, and we have a spot on there where you can just book a strategy call. So it's like a free call. And if you're, at 300,000 yearly revenue, or if you're at 10 million, like I have that option to just so you can jump on and talk to somebody that's, I'm in the industry, but also I have a digital marketing company. So I don't know everything that and probably vice versa. So I can help answer some of those website questions and some of the social media questions, things like that. So it's really a good tool and opportunity to connect with me, but then also like Luke and I are very connected. So we send people each other's way all the time. And then, I've got a tax guy that I use. I send excavation companies there all the time because he loves working with them. And it's really just, trying to
got financing, we got insurance, all that. Yeah. We're well booked with that.
Totally. And just trying to, connect everyone and put them in a good spot to succeed.
Yep. 100%.
But cool, man. Well, yeah. So before we wrap up here, any ideas on the next episode? Obviously it'll be launching in May. So any front runners or anything like that? Any ideas?
There's a couple people that I've thought about, just with like the space, and it doesn't even have to be in like the dirt world space. Obviously the Dirtbags podcast, the people that listen to it are fucking dirtbags.
Shout out
Dirtbags. But I want to get other people's, and that's another thing I think we forgot to mention. I don't want this to be such a storyline podcast. Obviously everyone wants stories, but I want it to be more of like a beneficial resource podcast as well. Yeah. Right. Where people can get some sort of knowledge, some sort of value. And granted, you can still get that from stories, but I feel like if there's dedicated topics or, talking points that we cover, helps a little bit.
Yeah, absolutely. So, I've got a few ideas of who we can talk to bring on in the future, and hits exactly what you just said, like somebody that can add value to the dirt world, or, just to people listening in general, but that have a different maybe perspective or a different, line of work that they do. And then we can all learn something, because what's the point if we're not going to learn anything of just, sitting and consuming it? Because then it's like you're sitting and listening to music in your car. You're not learning anything. And that's what we want with, that's what we want with this, is a way for you guys to really, sharpen your skills, learn at least one thing, and then put it to use, and also become more connected with our referrals and anyone else that we work with.
Correct. 100%. I agree. I was going to say something, but I forgot what I was going to say. If you listen to this podcast and you have an idea or something you want covered as far as like a topic, let us know. Shoot Luke a DM, shoot me a DM, shoot the Dirtbags podcast a DM. We'd love to hear from, like you said, Luke, I think we're at 51 downloads after show 1.5.
Yeah, 1.5.
That's better than 0. So hopefully as we continue to grow, more and more people have questions that we can hopefully bring on and kind of shed light to.
Yeah, absolutely. I love doing this stuff. I'm excited. Couldn't have a better co-host to do it with.
Dirtbag on the other end.
Absolutely. Yeah, we got to have two dirtbags on here. So, but yeah, let's wrap it up